World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Presendu of Newer Show, New York, and I'm proud to be the Community Engagement Manager of Soulful Synergy. And we at Soulful Synergy are really happy to be part of this dialogue, which we consider to be historical because of the multifaceted people that we have assembled today to talk about what we should be doing as a Black community to help bring sustainable development through an equitable lens, through a millennial perspective. We have a dynamic lineup of speakers that are going to be that we're really grateful for taking the time out of their schedules to facilitate this dialogue. As many of you may and may not know, we have a very ambitious climate agenda here in the state of New York, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which was passed in 2019, which is the most ambitious statewide climate agenda for any state in the United States of America. While it's important that we achieve this robust agenda, we got to make sure that no communities get left behind as we go through this transition, most importantly, our Black community. So for those of you who may not know, in the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, we have a very ambitious agenda of making sure that we reduce greenhouse emissions by 60% of our 1990 levels by the year 2030, and a reduction of 85% of those 1990 levels by the year 2050. For those of you who are a nerd for numbers like I am, that's making sure that we go from 236.2 million metric tons from 1990 to 94.48 by 2030, and down to 35.43 million metric tons by 2050. And 1 metric ton is the equivalent of 2,204.6 pounds. I had to get that correct number out. So 1 metric ton is the equivalent of 2,204.6 pounds, which really shows that we're really looking at lifting a Herculean amount of carbon emissions out of our air. But we got to make sure we do it the right way and make sure we're doing it in a way that's historically empowering Black communities that, as we all know, have been historically marginalized from these opportunities. Some of these are historical issues in terms of historical redline has occurred in our communities, depreciating our property values and putting people at a disadvantage at a fair shot at the American dream. And also it's really the important issues in terms of the social conditioning of young mindsets, so that people could see that people that look like us as members of the Black community can succeed in an environmental field and see this as a viable career pathway. Which is why it's important that we're uplifting the people that we're going to have speaking today to make sure that we can make sure that we have this connection to our young minds, to members of the Black community, so that we could bring in this climate agenda through a level of economic justice. For some people, it means being able to access a well-paying job and being able to have some sort of economic stability as a viable career pathway. And for other people, it's for being able to be involved in an emerging economy that allows you to be part of the greater solution. How could you be investing in yourself to become an asset for the sustainable development in your local community? And having these dialogues are very, very important. This is an intentional event that we put together at Soulful Synergy. We're discussing having this last year, but we're like, you know what? It's in the middle of Black History Month. This might be a little bit too much. So we made sure that we did it this year during this time following Black History Month so that we could really show that this is a dialogue that we want to have all throughout the calendar year. I do want to take a moment to extend that New York State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins will not be able to join us today due to a scheduling shift that she experienced at the last minute. But I do know that she is definitely an ally in facilitating these conversations, and we do look forward to having another event with her in the future to be able to discuss how important this level of sustainability is towards the execution of our New York State climate policy from the perspective of the majority leader. So let me just plug this information and how historic this is right here for this climate agenda in New York State, especially if we're going to make sure that we have a good roadmap to implement it equitably. It's actually more ambitious than the United Nations, the UNFCCC's framework for our climate plan. In 2016, on Earth Day, April 22nd, we passed the Paris Accord, the Paris Agreement, which has deadlines of a 45 reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, and us making sure that we are operating at net zero by 2050. So our plan in New York is leading the way through a global perspective, because it's not communities overseas in Bangladesh or Thailand that people are putting out carbon emissions. It's really our communities. But while we have to embrace that needed stewardship, we have to make sure we're doing it the right way, where we're empowering residents in our local communities to make sure that we're capturing these job opportunities at all levels of society. So for some people, it's becoming an engineer. For other people, it's becoming a technician for solar installations or becoming an electrician. We just have to make sure that we are putting out a robust multi-year strategy to prepare people to be the people that are helping rebuild their communities, especially if we are all having a shared sense of investment in the preservation of our natural resources. So I do want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this live stream. And with that being said, I'm going to pass the torch to my colleague, Dwayne Norris. He is a member of the Westchester County Government's African American Advisory Board, an ambassador for the Business Council of Westchester, and also is a member of former 40 under 40 Rising Star for the Business Council of Westchester. And I do want to thank Dwayne for really providing us with an opportunity to have this dialogue, millennial-led, Black-led, because we need to make sure that we are providing this dialogue in the space of the entire spectrum of what is our regional environmental community. So thank you, Dwayne. And Dwayne will step in and share some of the amazing work that he's been leading at Soulful Synergy, facilitating this dialogue.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Paul. He talks a lot of great things about me. Paul's an amazing guy, and he's actually coordinated pretty much everything you see here tonight. So I really didn't have to do much except come on, give a little intro, and be able to speak with these dynamic presenters today. So really thank you, Paul. Thank you for your great work on all fronts that you do to lead the economic and environmental message forward. As Paul noted, my name is Dwayne Norris. I am a co-founder of a company called Soulful Synergy. My best friend and I started this business about 13 years ago. In 2013, about 10 years ago. So Alejandro, if you're out there, appreciate you, brother. With the goal of really bringing resources to our community. Resources and education, I think, are the thing that will help to uplift all disenfranchised and disadvantaged communities from out of current situations. We need more resources. That is 100% true. But oftentimes we need to know that these resources exist. And so this platform tonight is really meant to be an educational format for the leaders that we have on this call to share the perspective that they have around what's happening in our communities, around sustainability, around environment, around equitable real estate development, and how these things intersect and how we can be a part of building our communities and being part of that future that we're creating. So at Soulful Synergy, we do a lot of our work through workforce development. We see that as a pathway towards economic development, and done correctly, it is contributing to the environmental benefits that we want to see for our community. And so a lot of our work is focused around anything from certification-based training in OSHA, Flagger, Scaffold, but also hands-on training in green construction, carpentry, electrical, plumbing work. In addition, we're also focused on a lot of clean energy training programs. We've been fortunate to partner with Con Edison, Willdan Energy Solutions, and receive a lot of funding from NYSERDA. And our company, along with a number of other small minority-owned companies, have been leading the charge on something called the Clean Energy Academy, Willdan Clean Energy Academy. And this training program, in our eyes, is a part of what you'll hear a lot of our panelists speak about tonight, that there is a lot of policy, as Paul mentioned, that has been written, and a lot of legislation that is enacted here in New York to move this climate agenda forward. But in order to make that a reality, money has to be invested into the system and people have to do the work. And we're focused on making sure that there is a talent pipeline, that there is a labor force that is skilled and able to participate in this industry as it moves forward. So the whole concept of clean energy may be new to some of our communities. There's an educational gap that's needed to kind of overcome for our communities to make sure that we're aware of the opportunities that are coming, some legislation that's already been passed and what that means for us. What are some of the economic benefits that come with that? What are some of the environmental benefits that come with that? What are the jobs and opportunities? What are the opportunities for contracting for those who have their own businesses? And make sure that we are aware of what's happening and have a voice and a say as these things develop. Some of the things that Soulful Synergy has advocated for is that as the money that comes through the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that Paul mentioned, or the Environmental Bond Act, similar to the Justice 40 initiative through the Biden administration or the Inflation Reduction Act, all these policies that you may have heard about, a lot of them have a 40% target for investment into what they call disadvantaged communities that have traditionally been harmed by environmental mismanagement, I'll call it, and have usually not received the benefits from some of the expansion or investment that happens. So if 40% of money is supposed to go into these communities, what we've been advocating for is that there is a number of Black and brown minority-owned contractors who are receiving those contracts, and that there's hopefully a hiring of local people to do that work, so that it's not an investment by the state government or the federal government into a community that needs the help, but the work is being done by outside contractors who get the contract. They don't hire locally, and then when they leave, they take that money with them out of the community, and the community doesn't fully benefit. And those are the types of things that we're trying to make sure that we're at the forefront of. So through our training programs, we are training individuals to prepare them to participate in the clean energy industry on anything from energy auditing. We do trainings around lighting, HVAC, heat pumps, heating and hot water. We're working on some things in electric vehicles, solar, and all of these, again, with the vein to make sure that individuals are prepared to take on some of these workforce opportunities. But the contracting is really the big stuff. And this is where I hope we get to talk about tonight as we talk about sustainable development. Is there's going to be a lot of infrastructure work being done. Some of our towns and cities have already been seeing it, where they're redoing the sewage, they're redoing the waterways, they're building out new developments, housing. There's tons of new development, even building out movie studios. So all these things that are coming to these communities, the development happening. We want to make sure that work is being done sustainably, but is also being done equitably. And so, through tonight's conversation, I hope we're able to shed some light on some different ways that you may want to participate. And then we want to further this conversation with our community leaders, our elected leaders, and just make sure that this is staying at the forefront of their minds as we look at how we can, have this really be a holistic approach to Black, brown, economic, and sustainable development going forward. So I really want to thank everyone for being here. As Paul said, this is the first of a number of conversations, and we're fortunate to have a really dynamic panel and lineup here for tonight. So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. He's the Westchester Deputy County Executive, Mr. Ken Jenkins. I do serve on the African American Advisory Board to County Executive George Latimer, so directly to Ken and his team. So I want to say thank you for being here. He's the first Black Westchester Deputy County Executive and the first former chair of the Westchester County Board of Legislators to serve in this role as Deputy County Executive. He's also the former president of the City of Yonkers branch of the NAACP, and as I understand, a proud electric vehicle owner. So Ken walks the walk and talks the talk. So Ken, if you're with us, we'd love to have you come and share a few words.
Well, first I want to say thank you, Dwayne, to you for your continued advocacy, and certainly with Alejandro, who you and him have developed Soulful Synergy. So shout out to you all for the work and the initiatives and continuing, and certainly to our great friend Paul, who put these things together, as you mentioned. Certainly, I'm happy to be here with all of you this evening and to be able to participate on a few different levels. So first, again, as you mentioned, the work that we've been doing from Westchester County's perspective as far as energy and sustainability, and certainly through working and putting shoulder to the wheel as County Executive Latimer and the team here says to talk about the Environmental Bond Act, and combining that with the work that we're doing for our MWBE participants, and whether that is from a scenario where we have, our first time developers, folks that have created their own businesses as an offset of the pandemic. We have Element 46, and we have a bunch of other programs that we have done to help people develop and create their own ways of continuing to be involved and engaged in the environment, as we do reuse and recycling, and making sure that we have equity in the development of things that are going on. A good friend of mine, that's talked to me about this for several years, not something new from him, Ken Carney and his team up that does a lot of development on Northern Westchester places, talks about making sure that when we go to a community, to make sure that we have a connection to the people that live and reside in the community, to make that investment, so that the people that are making the changes are the people that live in the community and that know the community best, but also can help develop and restore and revitalize their communities. So when we talk about making investments in energy and sustainability, and leveraging the dollars, the $4 billion plus from the Environmental Bond Act, plus the additional dollars that are out there for whatever sustainability efforts, whether that's another electric vehicle charging stations, whether it's talking about initial solar powered initiatives, or whether we're talking about energy efficiency, and when we're trying to move off of fossil fuels. Well, that's it. That's not just a commitment. You got to walk the talk. And again, Dwayne, I appreciate what you're saying about me from an EV perspective. But when you put all of the pieces together, when we talk about how we can have a healthier environment for our communities, which have sometimes had the least desirable desirable government institutions that are in that place, and whether that's a wastewater recovery facility, whether that is a waste to energy plant, or whether that is a garbage dump altogether, all those things that work together, that how can we take those, do the investments necessary with our state and federal partners, restore that land and turn that back into the community into some positive things? And how can we lead that effort as business owners and developers, not just people that are working, waving the flag and getting the cars to come by, or working as contractors and consultants on those projects, but also being the developer themselves, and then being the ultimate owner of those particular properties. That's why working with Soulful Synergy and all of our partners that we have out there at every level of government, my colleagues that are on the County Board of Legislators, and I know I saw County Legislator, Tyree Woodson Samuels, and certainly the leader, Andrea Stewart Cousins, and all the other partners that are going to be speaking this evening, that how we work together and partner and move forward to make sure that the opportunities are not only there, but we make sure to invest in those opportunities. From the county's perspective, we have a tremendous effort that we continue to do with our MWBE, WBE, DBE, SVDOB, OPP programs. All right, now there's no OPP program. You just do that in there to see if you're always paying attention to it. But the reality is that we have so many partnerships that we continue to do. So the county's here, and we're not only prepared to partner with you, and anyone that is participating in the event this evening, but we also want to continue to do that education, because the best thing that the county can do is help leverage our work with our government partners to make sure that we work with Soulful Synergy and other entities like that to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help protect the environment.
Well, I really appreciate that sentiment. Thank you so much. I want to ask one question, if I may, and you answered it in some capacity, and if you can expand on it just a little bit, but what are some of the opportunities you're seeing for the Black community to become more involved in some of the economic and sustainable development in Westchester County? You mentioned some of the MWB things. I know Westchester is under a lot of economic expansion, everywhere from New Rochelle to Yonkers to White Plains to Greenburgh to, everywhere seemingly doing a lot of new development. Are you seeing the kind of traction you'd like to see, or what are some of the opportunities that you're seeing where you feel like we can go a little bit further and make sure that we're having a stake in some of that development and making sure that it's being done in a sustainable way?
Well, there's two things you could do. I mean, one of the things that the county has started under the Latimer administration, and Martha Lopez has been the key to that for us, for MWBE participation. We created a path for people to enter their information so that they can go onto westchestergov.com and they can get onto our developers site, and you can talk as an MWBE business and be able to register yourself. So if you're state certified, that's great. But if you're not state certified, that we can help work with you to get those certifications and partner. There are so many tremendous different opportunities, Dwayne. I mean, it's not just what people have in their mind as far as traditional roles that people could play, but whether that is as construction management, whether that is about development itself, whether it's providing steel. You know, we have brother Andrew Simmons that does ANS rebar, that has that work, and rebar is in every big construction project, but he manufactures and fabricates that. We have all of those kind of things to do. We have a vendor that was listed recently in our MWBE database where people come and they look and they say, hey, wait a second, let me find a business that does X, Y, and Z. And they put their name down. They were able to come up with a 400 and earn, right? They didn't get it by accident. They earned a $400,000 contract with the MTA, and they got that opportunity because they partnered with the county and they put their name and registered themselves in our MWBE database. The $4.2 billion environmental bond act. We have infrastructure dollars. We have all kinds of things that we have an opportunity to do. So it's an opportunity for people to step up. And no matter where they are in the county, I know that you went south of 287, but if we went up to Peekskill and we went into different areas around the county, you know, we have our Latin brothers and sisters that are more in the Mount Kisco area, but we have pockets of folks in Bedford. We have all kinds of things happening. And people really got to start with the registering of the database. It's free. It's not something that costs you money to do. And then we can, start with our economic development programs. Go on westchestercatalyst.com, and we'll make sure to share that information with you, Alejandro and Paul, to be able to share with the members that are here this evening. There are so many opportunities for folks as long as they're raising their hands and stepping up and being able to work together to get this done.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that, Mr. Jenkins. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you very much. Next up, we have a very dynamic individual, a young leader, somebody I admire, look up to, Westchester County Legislator Tyree Woodson Samuels. He is the first millennial elected to represent the city of Mount Vernon on the Westchester County Board of Legislators. He's a former deputy director of constituent services for New York's 16th congressional district, and he's the first vice president of the Black Democrats of Westchester. I know he has a lot of perspective on this and everything from job growth and getting young people involved. I don't know if he'll get to share everything tonight, but he has a lot of value to add. And so, Tyree, just appreciate you being here, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Good evening, everyone. I'm County Legislator Tyree Woodson Samuels, representing money earning Mount Vernon, the 13th district. And to answer your question and to kind of go into what you alluded to, was about job creation, right? And I think job creation is extremely, extremely important to the community and extremely important to me. A fun fact about my hometown, Mount Vernon, is that we are the only majority Black municipality above the Mason-Dixon line. So this topic truly, truly hits home for me personally. But before I start my spiel, I want to start off by thanking a few people. First, Dwayne and Paul, two good friends of mine who are doing an amazing job leading the conversation both locally and nationally regarding sustainability. So I want to thank you both for the tremendous work you're doing. I want to thank my fellow panelists, Jasmine, who's a former Wonderkin like I am, and Rhea for participating. And especially our Westchester Deputy County Executive, Ken Jenkins, for being a true example in the embodiment of public service. So today, I want to talk about the intersection of two critical issues: the need for climate action and the need for economic opportunities for the Black community. See, these issues are not separate. They are deeply interconnected. And if we want to build a more just and sustainable future, we need to address them together. First, let's talk about the climate crisis. The science is clear. We are facing an existential threat to our planet. From extreme weather events to rising sea levels to biodiversity loss, the impacts of climate change are already being felt around the world, and especially here at home in Westchester County. And if we don't take bold action now, these events will only get worse. But here's the thing. Climate action isn't just about reducing emissions and protecting the environment. It's also about creating new economic opportunities. And again, just to put a pin in that, I serve on the County Board of Legislators in a few roles. I chair the Housing Committee for the board, but I'm also vice chair for Public Works and Transportation Committee, as well as Economic Development Committee. So a lot of what we discuss tonight and what we discuss moving forward will fall under those purviews. So I look forward to continuing to build with all of you. But it's about these new economic opportunities, right? The transition to a low carbon economy will require massive investments in renewable energy, sustainable transportation, green infrastructure, plus much more. And that means that there will be new jobs and new businesses emerging in these sectors. So let's turn to the economic challenges facing the Black community. We know that for far too long, Black Americans have faced systemic barriers to economic opportunity, from discriminatory lending practices to wage gaps to underinvestment in Black-owned businesses. The deck has been stacked against us. I'm a small business owner as well. Dwayne, you and your business partner can, I'm sure, attest to the extra obstacles that we have to overcome to secure certain financing or resources. So we have a lot of work to do in that area. And the COVID-19 pandemic has only made things worse, exacerbating existing inequalities and causing disproportionate harm to our community, to the Black community. So what's the solution? Here's where things get interesting. By investing in climate action, we can simultaneously address the climate crisis and create new economic opportunities for the Black community. You may ask how? Well, for starters, we can ensure that climate funding is directed towards projects that benefit Black communities. Again, going back to my district, right? 87% of my district is would consider Black. So, we're looking to do more than a few good things there. So, we can continue to go on and on about the funding. I think our deputy county executive did a wonderful job illustrating what the county has done. But there will be more funding coming down the pipeline. And I think in order to utilize and get access to this funding in the best way possible is partnership, right? Public-private partnerships, us in the public sector representing all of you, as well as Dwayne and others in the private sector coming together with local communities and leaders to funnel money to specific projects. So with that being said, Dwayne, I think I kind of gave an overview, but the long story short is the funding can be utilized to train people to be electricians, to be energy auditors, and other professionals in the construction and maintenance of clean energy infrastructure. Yes. So it's an exciting thing.
I appreciate that sentiment, because that is exactly the work that we're involved in. And it's great to hear that our legislators are thinking about how they can allocate resources towards these efforts as well, because the labor force that's needed to make this clean energy transition is vast. We're talking thousands of workers, and it's a huge undertaking because the skill sets are not prevalent. You are teaching people new skills for a new economy, for a new way of being. Everything that you mentioned around electric vehicles, for electrification, for transitioning to clean heat and air source heat pumps, for solar install, geothermal install. It's all here for us to be able to do, but we need the funding and we need the labor force. So I appreciate your sentiment, because I think we're seeing things very, symbiotically or in a very same vein.
Yeah, we see it the same way. I think we have a lot of catching up to do as a community. Even before this whole movement, a lot of our contractors didn't have the right certifications or licensing in their paperwork, et cetera, and therefore they don't get the contract, or they don't get the project, they don't get the deal. And that has, a domino effect when it comes to our community, because then group economics and the circulation of the Black dollar and those type of issues, that all is stagnated then, right? So it's the butterfly effect. Everything affects everything else. And I think this conversation we're having tonight will positively affect what we're doing locally. So I look forward to hearing from Rhea, from Jasmine, and from everyone else. So thank you again.
Much appreciated, man. Thank you for being here. So thank you, Mr. Tyree. We have the pleasure of having up next the New York State Climate Action Councilwoman, Rhea Salter, Esquire. Let me make sure I also get that right, because Rhea is a whole attorney.
Whole entire lawyer.
Rhea Salter is an energy and climate justice attorney, activist, and founder and executive director of the Energy Justice Law and Policy Center. Rhea is an appointed member of the New York State Climate Action Council, which is an environmental justice advisor capacity to the House National Resources and Oversight Committees. She's testified twice in front of these committees, and I don't know if you watched the videos, but they've tried to give her a hard time, and Rhea gives them a hard time right back. So she is a fighter. She is somebody that knows how to handle herself, and she's widely published on matters of energy regulation and is the editor of Energy Justice. So we have a lot to learn from Rhea. Very thankful for you being here. Always appreciate when you speak, because I learned so much. And she's been involved in so much, from environmental justice issues to helping draft the scoping plan at the New York State level, to just being an advocate on so many levels, going to testify in Congress. So yeah, looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And if I can give you a lead-in question of any kind, it would just be, I guess, kind of how do you think the Black community can be more involved with so much that you understand of what's happening in this space? What are some of the things that we should be paying attention to as a community? And what are some of the ways that you think we can be involved and be better advocates for our communities?
Well, thank you, Dwayne. This is the exact question that we all need to be focused on. First, I have to thank you, Dwayne, for this tremendous forum. It's important. I want to thank, of course, Representative Jenkins and Woods and Samuels, of course, Jasmine Graham, Paul. This really is a spectacular forum, and I'm honored to be a part of it, and it's really important. And why? This is a really important time for folks to be tuned into this issue. There are unprecedented amounts of funding, at both the state and federal level right now. And I really mean unprecedented. The big federal bill was the largest investment in climate action that the United States has ever done. We're talking many, many, many billions of dollars. And so it's really the time to be tuned in. And it's also the time to be, we say in the climate environmental justice movement, leader full. Because I want anybody who's listening out there, if you're interested, it doesn't matter if you've never done if you're interested in business, or you're a business person, or you're interested in this area and you haven't been involved before, it doesn't matter. Now's the time to step up and get plugged in. So there's a tremendous amount that's going on the state and federal level. So billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars are being allocated in various buckets. And Dwayne mentioned it before, both the federal and state government by law in the case of New York State, but by policy in the federal government, are giving, are mandated to give slices of this funding to priority communities. What does priority communities mean? There's been a state process in New York State where priority communities have been identified. Now we can supply the link to that. I encourage you to go ahead and put your own zip code into that map. You can put, so you can see where your community sits and what it means to be a priority community. And it won't surprise anybody that the Black communities in New Rochelle and Mount Vernon and Yonkers have been designated as priority communities on the state level and also on the federal level. So really this massive influx of money is happening in so many different buckets. And it's a lot. It can seem overwhelming, but I want to give just a taste of what some of these buckets are and how that's going to be unfolding in the coming year and two. So one of the buckets we're going to see on the federal level is money going for green lending and green banking. That is something that is coming out of the Environmental Protection Agency. We expect to see at least $20 billion being leveraged for green banking, again, with an emphasis on priority communities. And that is going to mean banking funds available at favorable and perhaps at times below market terms. Okay, so there are opportunities for low and no cost loans, innovation in things like patient capital, capital that waits, frankly, capital that waits for you to get your stuff together. There's also this huge amount of tax credits, which is making the clean energy industries more and more profitable. And so that's something folks like Dwayne, folks and others want to be a part of. And then there are billions of dollars of grants on the federal level that are going specifically to environmental justice projects and environmental justice organizations and communities. What does that mean? That really means community-based organizations in priority communities. So this is something that if you run a nonprofit, if you're a business person, you want to have in mind. So how do you go ahead and get involved? Really, the folks who spoke before me have already said it. Go ahead, and I understand it is challenging. I am working on it too. But get your MWBE certifications on the state and the federal level. Get your certs. That's one of the most important things that you can do. Second, inform yourself. Look at that priority communities map. We can send the link out and see where you fall. Also, plug into local associations, right? There's a Black Chamber of Commerce of Westchester. You can go online. There's a group called Women of Color and Sustainability. There's a Green Jobs Board. These are things you can follow on social media, get newsletters that'll help you get plugged in and get a taste of what's going on. Follow me, Climate Auntie, on Instagram. Follow your girl, Climate Auntie. I really do a lot in the policy and the organizing realm. So another bucket of activity, and you get to choose your own adventure with this, right? You may want to, just be somebody who's business minded, or you're seeking a job, or you might want to be advocating to make sure this money gets to Black people. So we need to do things like advocate with our local representatives, advocate for our local municipalities to have more just plans in terms of environmental and climate plans, and push for those type of equitable solutions. And that's only, folks mentioned the Environmental Bond Act. There are really a lot of barriers to our participation. And that, as also alluded before, I think the number one is that we're considered too small, right, for these big concessions. So many of us are small businesses. We may work in one area or another. And when we're looking at what could be a $100 million infrastructure concession, we're seen as too small. And so we have to partner up with larger organizations. So we really need to be working on partnering among ourselves and pressing for solutions from our reps in terms of, hey, we're small out here, but we need to be joining these projects in a way where we get a real say. The other major barrier, I'd say, is that historically, people who look like us have never gotten a lot of these concessions before. And so we need to be aware of this, and just don't be afraid to ask permission and step up and demand what we're due, because there's a tremendous amount of opportunity.
That was powerful. I hope you all took notes, but that is a lot of really great, valuable information. Just out of my own curiosity, how did you get started in advocacy work? And I want you all to follow her at Climate Auntie, because she really does put out a lot of great information. You get to follow her journey as she goes again and testifies, but also just a lot of great information. But just on my own curiosity, how did you get involved in sustainability work, climate work, and advocacy, kind of being on the front lines?
That's a good question. I started off as a bunch of things, as a social worker in Yonkers. But after law school, I practiced energy regulation for a large Wall Street firm, and learned about energy transactions in the context of mergers and acquisitions, big power plants being bought and sold. But I always knew that I wanted to be an advocate, and then I was going to advocate for clean energy and ultimately for Black people and people of color. And I always say to people, we all, when you just have that feeling, right, that you want some change, you want to do right, you care about things, just follow that feeling to where it takes you in life, and you'll be proud of who you become.
Here. Well, we're proud of you. I'm proud of you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have our final speaker up, definitely not least, but for now last, the one and only Jasmine Graham. Jasmine knows I'm like her biggest fan, so I always big up Jasmine, but she currently serves in a number of capacities. Today, I think she'll be mostly speaking in her capacity as the New York City Sustainability Advisory Board member, which she advises on things like Local Law 97. I'm sure she'll dig a little bit into what that is. But she's the Senior Equity and Affordability Advisor for the Building Decarbonization Coalition, where she's leading the planning, visioning, and execution of local and statewide campaigns, while also developing metrics to measure progress toward achieving equitable decarbonization. She may also have to break down what decarbonization means. There's a lot in there. She's a former energy justice policy manager of We Act for Environmental Justice, a Harlem-based environmental justice organization. Does a lot of policy and advocacy work. And for over 4 years, she managed the first community choice aggregation program in the entire New York State. So Jasmine, appreciate you being here as always. Excited to hear from you and excited to follow up after on the many conversations to come.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. So first off, thank you to you. Thank you to Paul Presendu for putting this together. And also thank you to the speakers who have come before me. They've made such amazing points. And this is a conversation that needs to happen. And in some ways, is really long overdue. So I agree with what everyone has said before us, that we really have an unprecedented opportunity to leverage the clean energy transition, to create healthy and sustainable communities, and also to bring wealth, to our community. And there are many ways to get involved. And Ryan named a few really key ones, especially in the midst of so much federal funding that's coming our way. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislation in New York and some of the opportunities. So for those who aren't aware, every year, New York State has a legislative session. So between January and typically June, the state legislators make laws. This is a critical period of the year. And right now in March, we're leading up to the budget, right, which is how New York State is putting forth the funding that we have and deciding, what types of programs are going to be funded. So I want to highlight a few pieces of legislation that are super important for people to pay attention to, particularly in the context of uplifting the Black community and addressing climate action. And I really appreciate that intersection that Tyree brought up. So one piece of legislation from, my former workplace, We Act for Environmental Justice, is a bill called the Energy Efficiency, Equity, and Jobs Act. This bill would make sure that Black, brown, and low-income communities are receiving their fair share of not just energy efficiency funding, but the jobs. This is really crucial because right now there's just not a lot of accountability on where money is going. Folks have alluded to it earlier tonight, but so often it is the same contractors getting these roles. They have the certifications, they have the connections, they're familiar with grant applications, which can be really difficult to navigate. And so it's really important that we actually are in the policy, in the legislation up front, putting carve-outs, aside that say, actually, 100% of this funding can't continue to go to affluent white communities. We actually need, 40% to go to what the state is calling disadvantaged communities. So similarly to what Raya spoke about on the federal level, there's also a New York State specific map that you can identify where you are on the map and whether or not you're eligible for this extra funding. And so in addition to the jobs piece, there are really great, legislative opportunities to get funding. Not only is there the federal funding that's coming down from the federal government, but we have, state opportunities as well. So one of the things that folks don't always know is that New York State has the oldest building stock in the entire country. And for that reason, we have a lot of work to do on retrofitting, right? Which is just, renovating our homes and our apartments to be more energy efficient, oftentimes getting fossil fuels out. So Dwayne noted that I might need to tell people what decarbonization is, and that is just a fancy way of saying getting carbon or getting emissions out of our buildings, or it could be out of transportation. And so decarbonization, lowering our emissions, is this really great opportunity. And the big way to do it in terms of buildings is to electrify. So to get that furnace, that fossil fuel boiler out of your home, and to switch to an electric heat pump or geothermal energy, all of which the folks at Soulful Synergy can definitely explain to you and help you get trained up to do. But in our communities, we actually have a bit of a bigger issue, right? If I'm going to make my home really energy efficient and weatherize it, right, like seal in the windows and make sure that I have a really tight building envelope, I can't also have toxins in my home. And so, because the building stock here is so old, we run into the issue continuously where folks actually can't electrify their homes because they have lead or mold or asbestos that first needs to be addressed. And so, I want to highlight a really awesome piece of legislation that is newly released in the past few days called the Climate and Community Protection Fund, which is sponsored by Senator Harckham here in New York State. This bill would direct, it's modeled after the Environmental Protection Fund. And so it would direct funding to a lot of programs, including building efficiency, including grants to community-based organizations, workforce training, and also rebate programs to help with energy affordability. But one of the key pieces of this is that there is also what's called a Green Affordable Pre-Electrification Fund, which is a lot of words, but what it is a gap fund. And it would actually give New Yorkers thousands of dollars of grant money to address the environmental health hazards like lead, mold, asbestos, any structural issues in your home, deferred maintenance that actually prevents you from doing the decarbonization or the electrification. So this is money that would go towards healthy homes here in the communities that need it the most. And then one of the last pieces of legislation, or it's actually not legislation, but I'd really like to uplift what's called, and it has a totally unfriendly name, but it's opt-out CDG. And what that means is it gives folks the opportunity to be automatically enrolled in local solar projects that reduce your energy bill. Typically, it's about 10%. And right now, there is no pathway for doing this. But as was mentioned in my introduction, I used to run a community energy program. And so in that type of program, it would be really amazing to actually get people connected to their local solar project, saving money on their energy bills, because we really have a energy affordability crisis in New York State, in New York City especially. And so the takeaway that I hope that you all see is that there's a lot of work being done, whether it's on the federal level, the state level, the local level. And we're so, I'm so glad that we heard from some of our local representatives, because oftentimes the greatest impact that you can have is local. So it's really important that folks are getting involved, that they know what are the legislative levers, what are the pathways. Folks can start their own business, or they can get trained up to work under a contractor, or they can become an activist or an advocate, and lobby in Albany and tell legislators, hey, this is what our community needs. We need everything from folks who are interested in sales and marketing, communications, to writing and journalism. I would love to see climate related things in the news every day. And I think it needs to be put in front of our communities more often. As of now, we don't always think about the ways in which climate action and economic opportunity are linked. But I think you heard from this amazing lineup of speakers tonight is that there are so many ways to get involved, and these two issues are not at odds with each other, but in fact they're entirely linked, and there's a lot of symbiosis here. So I encourage folks to stay in touch and, just know that there's so many ways to get involved and that there will be a way for you to get plugged in if you want. And I'm happy to be one of those folks that people can talk to. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, that was a really great overview of policy. I knew that's where you were going to shut it down and give people a really good sense of what's happening. And to your point, these things are inextricably linked. There is environmental policy and there's economics. Money is being invested, whether you want it to or not, whether you like it or not, whether you believe clean energy is a hoax, whatever you believe, money is earmarked at the federal government, at the state government level. Billions of dollars are coming into your community, and you either have a say in how it's being spent or you don't. And so the goal is to make sure that we're aware and that we can advocate for ourselves, for our community, to make sure that we have that economic stake. I did want to ask you a question because I know we've spoken about this separate and apart from the policy, but I know you have a passion of kind of addressing the underrepresentation of Black women within this industry. And even in particular, I know some things around HVAC that you would like to work on. Is there anything that you would like to say just in general that may inspire Black women to understand that they have a space in this industry, and anything that you want to leave us as some parting thoughts on the kind of underrepresentation that we're seeing?
I love a plug for Black women. Yes, thank you. Women are massively underrepresented in clean energy industries, whether it's solar, whether it's HVAC and building decarbonization, whether it's battery storage or offshore wind. I think across the board, I forget what the statistic is, but it's like 90%, particularly in the building space, like 90% of jobs are going to men. And so while we know that there is so much funding coming down, so many opportunities, we need to know and we need to see that we have a place in this transition. I really and truly am trying to get people to think that HVAC is sexy, that energy is sexy. I'm like, oh, do you know about heat pumps? Because the truth is that the opportunity is there and it's a lot more accessible than folks think. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of you and Soulful Synergy. And I just want to plug that women should get linked up with your training programs, right? Like there is massive opportunity out there. And it is comforting often to be able to go to, a trainer like you, someone who looks like you, who's been there, who knows that, maybe you got to like bring your kid one day because, the babysitter dropped out or it's too expensive, right? Like we have so much going on in our lives. And so to have spaces where we can be ourselves, where we can show up fully as ourselves to do this work and to have spaces where we're safe to do that learning is really invaluable. So, a plug for Soulful Synergy, a plug for women in decarb, and
Absolutely.
just knowing that, if you're not the one who wants to get on the roof, you could be the one that makes the phone calls. If you don't want to make the phone calls, you can run the spreadsheets, right? But energy pays well and is doing a lot of good things to make sure that we have a healthy and livable climate. So
that is awesome. Thank you. That is awesome. I'll say one, we're seeing in our Clean Energy Academy about 35% female participation. So we want to get that up and tick that up, but we are seeing incredible numbers of women wanting to be in this industry. In a lot of our training programs, my business partner will tell you, especially the hands-on classes, he said the women are doing better than the men and then the males within the classes. Attention to detail and everything else, superb. So we're seeing it little by little, making these transitions. The class that we ran over the summer was 50-50 male and female. So we're seeing the transition moving and trending in the right direction. So I'll just appreciate you for that plug. And yeah, we do have kids that come to the class sometimes, and that's life.
Yeah, that's life. Right. And only someone who's been through it can understand that, right? I think it's there's a special kind of camaraderie that we have, right? And so I think this event is a testament to it, the ways in which we are supporting each other to achieve what we all collectively need. It's really beautiful.
Awesome. Beautiful having you here. Thank you. I will send it to my man, Paul Presendu, to close this out. But before I do, I just want to say thank you To everyone who's listening, everyone who took some time out of their day to join us, with those who are going to watch the replay, thank you to Soul City TV Network. You always do an amazing job streaming all of our conversations and making it accessible, making it fun, making it more visually appealing. So hopefully you all like all the things at the bottom. And just want to say thank you to my entire team. I'm blessed at Soulful Synergy to have an amazing business partner who is my best friend, and we think up ideas and get creative and go on this crazy journey together, but a team of dedicated professionals at all levels. And we're very thankful for all of the team members that we have, all of our valued partners that really allow us to make this work a reality, because we don't do any of this in isolation. We have a lot of partnerships that make these programs successful with a lot of minority businesses, a lot of small businesses, government agencies, nonprofits. It is a whole team effort. And so just want to say again, thank you to all of our speakers, all of you listening, everyone who makes what we do a reality. And Paul, I will let you close us out, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. And honestly, I just want to thank you for providing us with a platform to have this conversation. I think that's really important, that we really pay recognition to you and your creation of Soulful Synergy alongside Alejandro, being a minority-owned business entity that's already in this space, walking the talk, closing the loop on providing an economic justice agenda as we deal with the entire spectrum of our climate emergency, and never losing sight of that, because we had to make sure that we really are doing the best that we can to empower the next generation of people that will be leading our communities and having a feel of stewardship, or being a stakeholder and helping with the sustainable development that's occurring within our communities. That's the most important thing, because we know what these economic opportunities can unlock towards creating a circular economy and funding our business entities, whether if it's a local pizzeria, a barbershop, or any other business entity that could really take advantage of having people with a higher level of economic stability in the local community. And I do want to plug in one thing about Soulful Synergy, is that if many of you who may or may not seen this, I'm part of the Department of Energy's email list for updates, and I would share that on May 24th this past year, Soulful Synergy was funded by the Department of Energy to support diversity, equity, and clean energy innovation. They were one of 18 companies out of over 200 companies that applied, and one of 2 New York companies awarded funding to really help the current presidential administration support this dialogue, and how could we intentionally address diversity and equity in a lens that is organic in terms of how we should be looking at addressing our climate-related issues. So we're not looking at equity as a box that you check off while trying to do a project. We're really putting it into the core nucleus of how we're putting together strategic partnerships for creating sustainability agendas. Also, I just do want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules, our panelists, our dynamic speakers, and those of you that tuned in via our social media live stream. For those of you who weren't able to join, you will be accessed playback on features. And also, we will be sharing this link to the environmental advisory committees of our municipal governments within the region. Whether it's for people in New Rochelle, we have the Ecology and Natural Resource Advisory Committee. City of Mount Vernon has a Tree Advisory Board. Other municipal governments have Climate Smart Communities Task Force, where we're really making sure that we put this information in front of the people that are on the day-to-day basis, helping support local policy creation, local environmental programming, so that we can look at addressing really having this equitable sustainability, not as a top-down approach, but really building up the foundation of really supporting a grassroots streamlined channel of communication, so we can really make sure we're getting this out there to the people that already are organically in the space to facilitate helping get information out there. For all of you that were able to attend this was a great event. You heard from everyone here, and I hope everyone is able to see the people that we've assembled as people that are organically serving as resources to facilitate this type of a dialogue. Our deputy county executive shared services for business entity creation and minority business entity credential gaining. We know that that's a pretty predatory practice for someone that doesn't have a business background. So just being able to be in one of the few counties that actually has as a service is something that we really have to make sure that we don't take for granted. We have Jasmine, who with her work with the Building Decarbonization Coalition, really serving as a resource for people in multifamily dwellings that might feel as if that sustainable retrofit is a luxury that they can't be involved in. Just Jasmine just being someone that has been exposed to so many things that are happening out there, and to be able to show people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel of being able to enhance your quality of life, that's something that is an invaluable asset. Ryan Salter with the Energy Justice Law and Policy Center, being able to engage communities and support them with creating an equitable sustainability agenda, and also, most importantly, revisiting the timeline of policy creation that placed the communities in the condition that they are now, is something that really is an invaluable asset towards public education, to really build upon the camaraderie for unified advocacy of what should be in our community and how it should be implemented. And also our county legislator, Tyree Woodson Samuels, the first millennial elected to the county board out of the city of Mount Vernon, him serving as the chair of the county board's committee on housing and vice chair of public works and transportation, is really an invaluable perspective for a young person in office, to be able to be forward thinking of how we're revisiting how we're visiting how we're having conversations on housing, sustainable retrofits, making sure that we're supporting net zero modular home creations, or even decarbonizing transportation methods. But most importantly, through a lens of environmental economics, so that we're making sure that we are supporting all of society with transparency on the opportunities. This was a historical dialogue. I will plug in one more time. When Shane and when Dwayne and I were talking about this conversation in the past, we were discussing, like, when should we do it? How should we do it? And we really didn't really have a prototype or a template to follow on having this conversation. Uniting people from the environmental, energy, justice sector, and people that are in the front lines dealing with this as public servants in government. So I'm really proud of how we're able to put this event together, and we really do look forward to having this as an event that we build upon in dialogue, especially as we expand the tent of people that could provide invaluable insight into how we could really put together a dynamic solution, because there are eyes that are watching us in Westchester County, or if it's in the state, or if it's nationally, because we do have such a dynamic, diverse culture and framework to really put together a solution that shows how we can really support diverse communities, and most importantly, the Black community, in empowering people with our growing Clean Energy Academy and overall sustainability agenda. So thank you all for taking time out of your day. Please don't hesitate to connect with us. Please don't hesitate to visit our website to gain any resources, and you could never hesitate to reach out to us if you're looking for access to resources in facilitating job creation for clean technology, or making sure that we're really building up that next bench of workforce to make sure that we're capturing job creation opportunities in our emerging clean energy economy. So
thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Soul City TV. We appreciate you, man.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.